Cory Sandhagen defeated Rob Font in the main event at UFC on ESPN 50. Sandhagen was dominant, and in his eyes, he solidified a title shot versus the winner of Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley later this month at UFC 292. Only thing is, the crowd was booing throughout the fight, and allegedly, the UFC president, Dana White, he even walked out, I guess, during this fight. Two big factors. Wada, lots to unpack here as well. Maybe not as much as we did in this last one because it's only an hour show, but give me your thoughts here on Sandhagen's performance and everything revolving around the booing.
Yeah, obviously not the most entertaining fight in the world. But listen, I mean, Cory, if you look at his UFC losses, 2 of them have come to TJ Dillashaw, a fight that he felt like he won, and a fight that Dillashaw won by control, and a quick submission loss to Aljamain Sterling, which are 2 things where there were a bit of deficiencies in his grappling. So that's a part of his game that he feels like he needed to work on to be a world champion. This guy's obsessed with being a world champion, as he should be, and he has the tools to do so. So for him, it's a part of his game, and we've seen him work with Ryan Hall a lot. So it's obviously a part of his game, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu that he's worked on a lot. And he just, Rob Font was an opponent switch. He was preparing for Omar Nurmagomedov, which was going to be a lot of defensive grappling, and then he gets a guy who's a striker. And I know stylistically, you look at the fight and people expected, all right, we're going to get a stand-up war, but he saw a hole in Rob Font's game that he felt like he could exploit, and it worked. So to him, it was probably like a great night in the office, except the injury, which sucks for him because he just revealed that he tore his tricep. He said he was dealing with something in training camp, so that could have played a part. He received a lot of criticism from Aljamain Sterling, wasn't impressed. Henry Cejudo, they said, he wasn't active at all from top. So listen, he did what he needed to do. It was a dominant win. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. Like I said, I mean, the 3 losses, the third one to Peter Yan, he was up 2 rounds, but he, ended up getting rocked and losing that fight on the feet. But the other 2 losses, Sterling and TJ Dillashaw, was a controlled grappling thing, and it's a part of his game that he's worked on, and he's happy with his performance. Now, Aljamain Sterling, when he spoke to ESPN after and was talking about, he said this win doesn't move Cory Sandhagen forward, but he said maybe Cory can fight Merab for the vacant belt. So listen, Aljamain may not even be the champion. He might, if win or lose against Sean O'Malley, he might not be the guy who's holding the title. So no, not necessarily does Cory Sandhagen get pushed to the side, because now it's kind of a 3-man race between Cejudo, Merab, who will enter the discussion once Sterling is either not champion or gone from the division, and Cory. So I think people will get over it eventually. Yes, it wasn't entertaining, but no, I don't necessarily think that Cory's out of the title picture because it was a lackluster performance. Because like I said, we don't even know what's happening with Sterling. We may not even have a champion after a month.
Okay, good stuff there. All right, Nolan, how about you with Sandhagen, man? He's a great fighter. No one's denying that. Does he kind of just get a pass? I guess we could say he was strategic. He was smart. He came out unscathed. I mean, minus the injury on the tricep that he mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, he's provided us with so many entertaining moments up until this that in terms of like my feelings towards him, I think he certainly gets a pass. I'm not going to sit here and say that was a fun fight or a great a great showing by any means. He was super dominant, though, and that's the name of the game. It wasn't a great showing in terms of trying to build his stock. It was a great showing in terms of dominance, and he went in there against the guy who's very tough, top 10 perennial contender in Rob Font, and he dominated from bell to bell. So in that regard, he did what he was supposed to do. On the flip side, we know how the UFC runs things. We know what they're looking for, and if UFC President Dana White did get up and leave during the 4th round, and that was out of spite, that is certainly not a good sign for Cory Sandhagen going forward. I tweeted on Fight Night that I think Merab was kind of the biggest winner in this whole thing. I mean, if Sean O'Malley wins against Aljamain Sterling, I think Merab is going to be the guy. Whereas before, say like Sandhagen had gone out and knocked out Font, then there maybe would be that discussion of which guy should get it. Now, like Farah said, if Aljamain does vacate, you're going to have 2 people for that vacant belt, and so Merab versus Cory seems like it would make a lot of sense to me. That would be the fight. So maybe he will luck into a title shot in that regard. But honestly, I think it's a fight that once people see Cory get back into the cage and fight again and goes back to his usual, fun sort of striking style with some fun knockouts and stuff, people have short memories. It's always about what you did for me lately. And unfortunately for Cory Sandhagen, what he did recently is not very exciting, and it was boring, and people booed, and Dana might have left or whatever. So that's the memory people have now. But it will be erased. I think Cory's not a guy that's going to go down this path of all of a sudden being, a guy that's just a wet blanket. I don't think so. In the short term, probably damaging to a certain degree. Long term, I think he doesn't have anything to worry about.
Anthony Hernandez in the chat. He says he walked out of the arena. He was in Nashville. He's coming from Facebook. So is Mikkel Odinger. You can Facebook people. We've been doing our thing on Facebook as well. Feel free to leave a comment or a question. West Coast says Merab is number one. WSH RB says give him to Merab as well. Mike, what are your thoughts on the main event in Nashville?
Yeah, obviously not the most exciting performance, but I'm kind of with both the other two panelists here. You got to give him a little bit of a mulligan here. If he tore his tricep in the first round, it's even more impressive to beat Rob Font with essentially one arm, right? Like, that's not easy to do. He took the path of least resistance. Where's the criticism from Rob Font for not being able to get up off his back, right? Like, he deserves just as much as Cory Sandhagen. You take the guy down. If he's letting you stay there and you have a referee that's willing to let that play out, that's the way the fight's going to be. Cory doesn't need to take any unnecessary risks. The only reason they had a main event here is because, Rob Font stepped up and Cory also agreed to take the change of opponents. So you want to give the guys a little bit of a break here, cut them some slack. I don't think it's a great look if Dana White did get up and leave. The last time I remember him doing that mid-fight was, I think, the first UFC event I ever covered as media, UFC 149, when he pieced out in the middle of Hector Lombard and Tim Boach, which was an awful fight back then too. And there was obviously a lot of hype around Hector Lombard's debut, and it was a flat fight. But yeah, I mean, just stick by your guys. It's a few more minutes to just go there, and you could have come to the press conference and maybe talk Cory up a little bit for winning a fight in that dominant fashion. But it is what it is in this regard. The bantamweight title picture is very complicated. We don't know anything for sure in a couple of weeks, and I think, as Nolan kind of said there, if there is a vacant title and you match up Cory with Merab, I think people are going to get excited for it. So people have short memories in the sport. It's disappointed. I understand your frustration if you were in the Bridgestone Arena and you paid money for those tickets, that's how the night ended for you, especially because it wasn't maybe the most spectacular card overall. And historically, each of the previous 5 main events in Nashville have delivered when they've been there, and that didn't follow up to it. So it's just one of those unfortunate things. But I can't really flack on Cory Sandhagen too hard for beating a guy like Rob Font with one arm.
Good stuff, guys. Pro Fights Info in the chat says people are crying about the fights aren't real fans. Sandhagen had to do what he had to do to get 2 paychecks and a W. End of story. People should be more angry at Rob Font for not being able to get up. Kind of what Mike Bond said. CY Stevie in the chat says Cory's last 3 wins are more impressive than Merab's 3 wins. I'd have to think about it to say. Vada, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, his second comment, he said people forget how absolutely boring Merab versus Aldo is. There you go. We talk about, it's kind of like an in the moment type of reaction. Yeah, that was not the most entertaining fight, but we all think that Merab is legit and he deserves to be in the title picture. So there you go. It's not always going to be the most entertaining showing, and Sandhagen has given us so many entertaining fights. So I think we can let him off the hook for this one.
Yeah. And I don't think any of us are going to sit here and defend and say, that the fans should have got up and given Cory a standing ovation after that fight. But there has to be a certain amount of respect that comes with seeing a guy just dominate, another fighter in the division who's in the top 10. So kind of 2 wavelengths, right? And that's what they meet when it comes to the fight game. The UFC seems to find that balance of, respecting the talent versus you got to show me something to get those fans up off the seat. So when you hear us saying that this was, a really good performance and dominating, I think we also understand where you guys are coming from. If you paid money and you wanted to see what was advertised as supposed to be a fun striking match, I get the boos, you know what I mean, at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I was expecting a lot more from the striking, but all right.
And you never know. Maybe Cory doesn't get the fight. This injury, he said surgery this week in his Instagram post. Merab's hurt, Cejudo's hurt. So who knows what happens here ultimately? I mean, obviously not rooting for anyone one way or the other. We try to keep it unbiased, but for the health of the division, it seems like Sean O'Malley winning the title in a couple of weeks is probably the UFC's best case outcome. And I'm sure they'd love him to kind of go to that next level of star power. So we'll see how it plays out.